explain your role in the Kansas City, Missouri School District during the years between 1971 and 1997?
Well, in 1973, I started to work for the Kansas City School District with a program called Teacher Corps. It was the last part of the Peace Corps under the Nixon administration, and that, by the way, tells how old I am. And what we did, we worked in the urban core, and we worked with youth with reading and math. And those were the main concerns that we had. And then we had a project that we would work with after school. And my project was a club I had. I worked with first graders, and then the club I had was for sixth and seventh graders. It was called the What's Happening Club. And the What's Happening Club was just bringing youth up to what was going on in current affairs, and I'd bring a newspaper in, or I'd just have quizzes and stuff as far as what was going on. You know, I stayed in there for a few years because it was a program that was, we partnered with KU. And so the ultimate was to get our education degree from KU. And so basically that was a lot of what I did. And after I was out of the program a year before the end of it, and we had some problems with just some hours that were supposed to transfer. My major at first was law enforcement, and they didn't accept the law enforcement on the second year when initially they took me in, because I had to have 60 hours just to get into the program, and now they didn't take that. So I kind of worked as a TA, a teacher's aide, for a little bit. At that time, Julia Hill was the superintendent of the Kansas City School District. And so the 70s kind of led a lot of what I did. And I kept coming back to the school district to do volunteer work.
And what efforts were put into place in Kansas City to integrate schools?
One thing that I saw that I didn't really like, but I saw it being implemented, and that was there was a number of teachers fresh out of college that were white and that didn't have any background in the urban core, and they were just thrown into schools. Now, I think one of the things that I really have appreciated with UMKC, and I was one to start that program, the community immersion, to kind of give teachers kind of a look at what the students' parents deal with. They had no idea, and I was always going around. I worked at John J. Pershing on 59th and Park, and I was going around all day putting out fires because, you had angry parents, and no one wanted to help them. It was just like they were out there on an island, and I just didn't like the way that was done. They had no support, and the people that they went to for support said, well, you just need to learn how to handle that. And I'm like, well, I don't think that's right. Me and four other people, we were considered radicals. Mine was because of a hairstyle that I had. I had my hair corn rolled, and you could probably tell by now that I still do that occasionally. But people like Lloyd Daniels was one that I went to school with, Claire Thornton, and they called us radicals because we thought it was just a disgrace the way that kids did not have the formal skills that they needed. I had a fifth grader. Now this fifth grader could not write his own name, not someone else's name, but his own name. And a lot of the other teachers told me that, why are you going over to this kid's house? You don't get paid for that. That's after school. I said, but he can't even write his own name, and it was a lot of things that I saw that just weren't done right. And we just kind of fought a little bit, and we kind of stood out because everybody else was just trying to, do what they needed to do to get their degree. And we were saying we really wanted to make a difference. And, what was really neat, the president of my What's Happening Club went on to Rolla and became an engineer. All the officers in my club turned out to do something. And a lot of them came back and said, Mr. Turner, that club was a good thing for me to have in grade school.
And how did the community respond to the efforts to integrate schools?
I think it was mixed. I think there was a lot of people that felt as though it should have been left the way that it was. And then, because you'd always hear the talk. There was always talk that was going on about how things were done and how they maybe should have been done differently. And my whole thing was that bothered me the most is that it was really just, talking about big A's and little me's, and no one talked about the children. The main concern should have been the kids that they were trying to educate. And so there wasn't a lot I saw from the community as far as support. I had my concerns about Miss Hill, the way that she was doing things, because it's kind of a dictatorship type situation, and nothing was getting done. We had more arguments over paper and supplies than we did about test scores and other things, and that just wasn't what I thought should happen. And when I think about it, these kids now are in their 40s. What are they doing? I know what one kid's doing. He's in prison. And a lot of it was they would send him home when he didn't need to really be. They could have done an in-school suspension because he had a problem with asthma, and they'd send him home in the winter, and there was nobody there, so he'd sit outside for 2 or 3 hours waiting for someone to come home. I brought that up to the principal, and I think his comment was, "You do your job and I'll do mine." I think one of the biggest things that I can recall is I think people didn't really want it to happen, and it was kind of an undercover type situation. I'll give you a perfect example. I had a case study I was doing for a kindergartner. Kindergartner did not participate in school, did not talk or anything. Nothing happened. So I'm working with Western Missouri. This was a special case, we had one special case we were supposed to have, and I was working with this kindergartner. I went over to the house, the kid just lively, very talkative, and never talked at school. And I'm like, what was this all about? And so to make a long story boring, when you got to the end of it, it was that the teacher that was there did not want to deal with the African American students that she had. And so it was the way that she treated the students that caused him to shut down. Now, they of course, they dismissed her from her responsibilities, but how many kids came in before that? And how many other teachers kept theirs in a way that no one knew anything about it? I went to the first integrated school south of the Mason-Dixon line, which was Allen School, which is now Allen Village. And there was a lot of things that happened over there that once we all got older, we talked about things like some of the black students were out at recess for like 2-3 hours. And everybody thought that was great, but what it was, they just wanted a way to get everybody out of the classroom. And then there was one teacher that Miss Shirley Schaff. Now she embraced everybody that came in. It's like, integration was not a problem. Kids are kids, and none of the other teachers liked her because of what she did. I mean, I think the only reason that I even thought about going into teaching is because of her. And I had her in the 5th, 6th, and 7th grade. Had her for 3 years. I wish I could have had her for 4. I think, again, I think it was mixed, but I think the only reason it was mixed is because of what the parents might have been saying. You had kids that were coming from, they had to get up extremely early to get to another school. And then once they were there, a lot of them were separated from their friends, so you kind of had sometimes kind of an attitude of, I really wish I was still where I was at. And a lot of them I talk to and say, hey, it doesn't make any difference where you're at. What you need to worry about and be concerned about is getting an education. But, that's kind of hard when you're talking to people that are from K to 7, that's like, right.
Now, what ways do you feel that you contributed to school integration?
Well, one was just being there. I think one of the things that I did, and I talked to the teachers that I said, the white teachers that were thrown in to these schools, I talked to them a lot about not giving up. And I said, this was not a good way that it was set up, and you feel like everybody's kind of throwing you out there, but that's not the end of this whole saga. So what you ought to do is just get your feet, firm under you and continue to do what you're doing in teaching. Let this be the last thing you do is give up. Because a lot of them were talking about, how to do something else. I said, no, that could be the worst thing that you would do because, you've already had baptism by fire. So now that you've had baptism by fire, hey, stay in there a little bit longer. Now, this was something that nobody said, hey, Mark, you ought to go over and talk to, because everyone else, again, everyone was kind of in a silo. This is where I'm at, hey, hope those teachers make it. Is it 2:30 yet? Kind of attitude.
How did efforts to integrate schools affect your role in the district?
I think the biggest way it affected it is that they wanted to do something to show that not only the school district, but the federal government was interested in what was going on as far as integration and dealing with problems that they had in the school system, which was math and reading. When you look at math and reading, and those were two areas that they want us to really focus on, I think those were the things that everyone wanted to show that, and especially under the Nixon administration, he wanted to show, and this was the last part of the Peace Corps. There was no more Peace Corps after this. I tried to find something else, but it wasn't anything there. So I think it was just to give an example of what could be done and how it could be done.
And given your role in the district during 1971 to 1997, describe what you recall as academic outcomes for students.
I looked at the outcomes, and I don't think the outcomes were really realistic. I saw a lot of students that were just moved on. Not they didn't reach any kind of particular expectation. It was just they didn't cause a lot of trouble. They were quiet. Hey, I don't care if they can't read. We're going to move them on. And so I think in today's workplace, we've got more things set up to try to catch those kind of things as far as looking at where a student is at and if there are things that we can do to try to help them to achieve what they need to achieve. But back then I just saw a lot of students getting moved on, and the way that I would catch that is again with reading. If you're in the 5th or 6th grade and I'm reading first grade books with you and you're having problems with the words, someone just said, let them go on. And then you'd hear all this stuff in the break room, about so-and-so, and, I had their brother last year, and you're really going to have a problem. And I said, that's not what I need to hear.
And what might have been some of the social outcomes for students of school desegregation?
I think one of the biggest social outcomes would be understanding how to get along with everyone. I think diversity is what makes us as a country strong, and I think in school systems, that's what makes a school system strong. I think teachers are, if they're a good teacher, they're a good teacher. I don't think I know I've had discussions with people that feel like black students should be taught by black teachers and vice versa. And I think if a teacher's good, it doesn't make a difference, what their ethnicity is. I mean, it's the fact that they care. And I guess that's a lot of what I saw with, my own experience with Miss Sheff. She just cared, and everybody went back to see her, and I mean, I went back and I was keeping in contact with her when I was in my 30s.
And in what ways might school integration have shaped Kansas City communities?
I think it would have gave them a better perspective over the world in general. I think Kansas City is a place that I think we segregate by choice. And I think if if the schools, and again, I'm looking at what I did and people that are now, they probably have families now, and I think the experience that they had, if they would have let that, if they let that go into the community, that's going to give them something that they can look at and try to treat everybody, not so much on how they look, but how they're treated, or how they treat them, and I don't think that happens enough. I think people just, they kind of get in a stereotype of, and I think stereotypes are just because people don't get to know other people. If you don't know them, you have to stereotype. So then you put that stereotype in and you never get to know the person.
What changes do you think are needed to improve outcomes for students in today's urban public schools?
I think the biggest thing that needs to happen is, again, to me, teaching is more of a calling. And I think what needs to happen is that you have senior instructors that will come around and not announce it, but just come around occasionally and see what's going on in a classroom situation. I'll give you a perfect example of a situation that happened while I was here at UMKC. There was a school over in Kansas City, Kansas. It had over 600 students there. Out of 600 some students, 400 and some of those students, they had English as a second language. Everybody said that testing was going to be a nightmare because of the language barrier. Well, no one in the staff was bilingual, and they had no other help except the fact that the teachers cared. And what happened with the school? That school scored higher than any school in the state. Not because they brought someone in that could speak Spanish, they had about 7 other different languages there. They didn't do that. What they had were teachers that might have come in early, teachers that spent extra time, teachers that saw, so it just gets back to caring. I was at church last night and saw someone that remembered me from over here and said she's got another year to do this. And then I was working out and I saw somebody that said they're teaching 4th grade. And it's not that, hey, I'm teaching 4th grade. It was like an excitement that they're teaching 4th grade. And so I think if you look at what we have today, we just need to make sure we get the right people. I saw people in teacher corps that really didn't need to be, working with kids, because their whole thing was, I'm going to sit until it's time for me to go, and I'm not going to stay here at 2:30, 2:35. I should be in my car and on my way home. You need teachers that want to give not just 100%, but 125%. Because they know that they're going to be the ones that make the difference, and that's it in a nutshell. And
do you think that that's something that perhaps pre-service teachers would bring to a program, or is that something that we could cultivate within teacher education programs?
I think it could be a combination of both. I know with the experience that I've seen over here, I think it's cultivated already into the program, definitely with the community immersion program, and then with having teachers that come out and they're teacher coaches. They need someone to bounce ideas off of. What am I doing right? What am I doing wrong? And someone to say, you know what? I think you're going to be a good teacher. And it again, I think it's a calling. You really have to really want to do it. And if you really want to do it, the kids are going to know that you really want to be there. It's not going to take anything for them to say, yeah, this person is happy because they're there and they want me to learn. Because kids are like sponges. They're gonna soak up as much as you want to give them. If you don't want to give them anything, what do they have? Well, the community immersion program, I think that was 2008. I kind of consider a mentor, Dr. Blackwell, asked me if I would consider doing a program just going out into the community, because she knows I do a lot of things in the community. Like I said before, even when I wasn't working at the school system, I was going out and talking to kids all the time when I was in the field of business, because I worked with the phone company for a number of years. I'd go out and talk to kids about staying in school. So I was still out there in a way, and just to maybe give students a little bit of an experience that they never had before. the first year, there was, I think we got about a $4 million grant from Kellogg's because of some of the responses and the way that the students were really happy to have that experience, and they even did a little video and stuff over it, and I thought that was really good. I think the biggest thing that it did, it gave them a chance again to see what the parents were dealing with on a regular basis. One outing I had was, we're going to go and pick up your child, okay? We're going to get on the Truce bus. We're going to ride downtown. We're going to go to Woodland Elementary School. We're going to pick up your child. We're going to walk down to where the used to be Wayne Minor Projects, and now it's still kind of I'd say housing, low-income housing, but nevertheless, that's the only place you can find a babysitter. You're going to drop your child off, you're going to take the 12th Street bus back over to Main Street, and then you're going to take a bus back out to UMKC because you have a class that night. And I had students that said, I've never taken a bus before in my life. And then one group said, people have to deal with this every day, don't they? You know, so when you look at, I want to talk to this mother, and we're trying to have a parent-teachers meeting, and she always has an excuse because she has to work. It's not an excuse. It's the reality of the fact that maybe she's having to work from one job to the other, and she doesn't have time or the transportation to get where you think she could be to, you know, to have that little bit of a talk. So I really enjoyed the community immersion program. I had a lot of people that came in and talked to the students, people that dealt with kids that were having behavioral problems over at Swope Parkway. I had someone come in and talk about sex trafficking. It was just a lot of things to just kind of let them know. I think it's one thing to be in a community that you work at and you're at that school, and as soon as school is over, you leave and go somewhere else. It's another thing to be a part of that community. And that was one of the things I stressed in the class. Don't just be someone that you do your time and you leave. You should be that resource that if there's a problem and a parent needs to, how can they get bus passes? How can they get food stamps? You should be a resource that they could go to, not just about their education, but about things that are out there that are going on in life. And that was one of the things I gave. I always gave them something that they could take away, and it was more than just one thing. So that, to me, that's what a teacher should be. Should be a resource center too.
Is there anything else that you would like to share with us about school integration in Kansas City?
The biggest thing that I think of when I think of integration in school is that everybody has to be on board. It's amazing when I had the time over at Allen Village and we were all going to school and nobody knew what color anybody was, We just knew that we went to school together, and they'd come over to my house and my grandmother would make cookies and hot chocolate and everybody would sit up. I saw a guy, he had to have a pacemaker put in, and him and I used to run together all the time, and he just, if I wasn't getting in trouble, but we didn't pay any attention to anything other than that we were friends, and I think that would be something, when you look at integration, I think that should be something, should be the ultimate goal. I still talk to people that I went to first grade with that are white, Latino. And my wife couldn't believe that I still keep in contact with somebody. Abel Ramirez, I've known since first grade. I was talking to someone where I work at now. She couldn't believe all the people that I knew. Well, we grew up together. We grew up right around the corner. So, we look at all the things that are going on in the world today and the troubles that are going on, and I think just because people don't understand people. And I think a place where you look at understanding people should be in a place where you're learning. You're learning, about, you're learning math, you're learning social studies, you're learning science. You ought to learn about people. I had a guy one time that came over and said, I remember you from grade school. And a little Italian kid named Angelo. I used to think Angelo was so cool because he could swallow a penny, and I thought that was the coolest thing in the world. I said, man, Angelo, how do you do that? He said, it's pretty easy. You just do that and you drink a lot of water, And he knew me from like 30 years later. This was fourth grade, and he still remembered me. So that's That's what I would like to see. It's not so much the integration, but I think it's the understanding people, and my mother always used to say I was someone that could talk to anyone, because I can get along with anybody, and I think all that happened with the fact that where I went to grade school, where I went to high school, it all just gave me an education that I didn't get in the classroom, but I did get in the classroom.